I cannot live without books. Do you want to know who you are? Don't ask. Act. Action will delineate and define you. Honesty is the first chapter of the book Wisdom. The legitimate powers of government extend to such acts only as are injurious to others. It does me no injury from my neighbor to say there are 20 gods or no God. It neither picks my pocket nor breaks my leg. The man who reads nothing at all is better educated than the man who reads nothing but newspapers. On matters of style, swim with the current; on matters of principle, stand like a rock. The most valuable of all talents is that of never using two words when one will do. I'm a greater believer in luck, and I find the harder I work the more I have of it. I would rather be exposed to the inconveniences attending too much liberty than to those attending too small a degree of it. Our civil rights have no dependence on our religious opinions any more than our opinions in physics or geometry. History, in general, only informs us what bad government is. Nothing gives one person so much advantage over another as to remain always cool and unruffled under all circumstances. Determine never to be idle. No person will have occasion to complain of the want of time, who never loses any. It is wonderful how much may be done, if we are always doing. I had rather be shut up in a very modest cottage with my books, my family and a few old friends, dining on simple bacon, and letting the world droll on as it liked, than to occupy the most splendid post, which any human power can give. If a nation expects to be ignorant and free, in a state of civilization, it expects what never was and never will be. I know no safe depository of the ultimate powers of the society but the people themselves, and if we think them not enlightened enough to exercise their control with a wholesome discretion, the remedy is not to take it from them, but to inform their discretion by education. This is the true corrective of abuses of constitutional power. I am not an advocate for frequent changes in laws and constitutions. But laws and institutions must go hand in hand with the progress of the human mind. As that becomes more developed, more enlightened, as new discoveries are made, new truths discovered and manners and opinions change, with the change of circumstances, institutions must advance also to keep pace with the times. We might as well require a man to wear still the coat which fitted him when a boy as civilized society to remain ever under the regimen of their barbarous ancestors. The whole art of government consists in the art of being honest. All should be laid open to you without reserve, for there is not a truth existing which I fear, or would wish unknown to the whole world. If you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done. But friendship is precious, not only in the shade but in the sunshine of life. Thanks to a benevolent arrangement of things, the greater part of life is sunshine. I will recur for proof to the days we have lately passed. On these indeed the sun shone brightly. Never put off to tomorrow what you can do today. Never trouble another with what you can do yourself. Never spend your money before you have it. Never buy a thing you do not want, because it is cheap, it will be dear to you. Take care of your cents, dollars will take care of themselves. Pride costs us more than hunger, thirst and cold. We never repent of having eat too little. Nothing is troublesome that one does willingly. How much pain have cost us the evils which have never happened. Take things always by their smooth handle. Think as you please, and so let others, and you will have no disputes. When angry, count 10. Before you speak if very angry, 100. Timid men prefer the calm of despotism to the tempestuous sea of liberty. I think one travels more usefully when they travel alone, because they reflect more. It is an axiom in my mind, that our liberty can never be safe but in the hands of the people themselves, and that too of the people with a certain degree of instruction. This it is the business of the state to effect, and on a general plan. Do not bite at the bait of pleasure till you know there is no hook beneath it. I was bold in the pursuit of knowledge, never fearing to follow truth and reason to whatever results they led. When injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. To compel a man to furnish funds for the propagation of ideas he disbelieves and abhors is sinful and tyrannical. I like the dreams of the future better than the history of the past. Every day is lost in which we do not learn something useful. Man has no nobler or more valuable possession than time. I am increasingly persuaded that the earth belongs exclusively to the living and that one generation has no more right to bind another to its laws and judgments than one independent nation has the right to command another. I never considered a difference of opinion in politics, in religion, in philosophy, as cause for withdrawing from a friend. What a stupendous, what an incomprehensible machine is man! Who can endure toil, famine, stripes, imprisonment and death itself in vindication of his own liberty, and the next moment inflict on his fellow men a bondage, 1 hour of which is fraught with more misery than ages of that which he rose in rebellion to oppose? Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government. Our liberty depends on the freedom of the press, and that cannot be limited without being lost. The will of the people is the only legitimate foundation of any government, and to protect its free expressions should be our first object. Peace, commerce, and honest friendship with all nations. Entangling alliances with none. Be polite to all, but intimate with few. The natural progress of things is for liberty to yield, and government to gain ground. He who knows nothing is closer to the truth than he whose mind is filled with falsehoods and errors. I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. He who permits himself to tell a lie once, finds it much easier to do it the second time. Enlighten the people generally, and tyranny and oppressions of the body and mind will vanish like evil spirits at the dawn of day. Every human being must be viewed according to what it is good for. For not one of us, no, not one, is perfect. And were we to love none who had imperfection, this world would be a desert for our love. No people can be both ignorant and free. Those who expect to be both ignorant and free, expect what never was and never will be. A library book lasts as long as a house, for hundreds of years. It is not an article for mere consumption, but fairly of capital, and often in the case of professional men, setting out in life, it is their only capital. Pride costs us more than hunger, thirst, and cold. An honest man can feel no pleasure in the exercise of power over his fellow citizens. The dead should not rule the living. I do not take a single newspaper, nor read one a month, and I feel myself infinitely the happier for it. An enemy generally says and believes what he wishes. It is reasonable that everyone who asks justice should do justice. It is more dangerous that even a guilty person should be punished without the forms of law than that he should escape. Peace and friendship with all mankind is our wisest policy, and I wish we may be permitted to pursue it. Man, once surrendering his reason, has no remaining guard against absurdities the most monstrous, and like a ship without rudder, is the sport of every wind. With such persons, gullibility, which they call faith, takes the helm from the hand of reason, and the mind becomes a wreck. In questions of power, let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. He who knows best knows how little he knows. The greatest service which can be rendered any country is to add a useful plant to its culture. We are afraid of the known and afraid of the unknown. That is our daily life, and in that there is no hope, and therefore every form of philosophy, every form of theological concept, is merely an escape from the actual reality of what is. All outward forms of change brought about by wars, revolutions, reformations, laws and ideologies have failed completely to change the basic nature of man and therefore of society. A great deal of love given to a few is better than a little to many. Dependence begets subservience, and venality suffocates the germ of virtue, and prepares fit tools for the designs of ambition. I find that the harder I work, the more luck I seem to have. Experience demands that man is the only animal which devours his own kind, for I can apply no milder term to the general prey of the rich on the poor. Never trouble another for what you can do yourself. I would rather be exposed to the inconveniences attending too much liberty, than those attending too small a degree of it. When I hear another express an opinion which is not mine, I say to myself, he has a right to his opinion, as I to mine. Why should I question it? His error does me no injury, and shall I become a Don Quixote, to bring all men by force of argument to one opinion? Be a listener only, keep within yourself, and endeavor to establish with yourself the habit of silence, especially in politics. Our civil rights have no dependence upon our religious opinions more than our opinions in physics or geometry. I am satisfied, and sufficiently occupied with the things which are, without tormenting or troubling myself about those which may indeed be, but of which I have no evidence. How much pain they have cost us, the evils which have never happened. Question with boldness even the existence of a God, because, if there be one, he must more approve of the homage of reason, than that of blindfolded fear. Equal and exact justice to all men, of whatever state or persuasion. Everything yields to diligence. Ignorance is preferable to error, and he is less remote from the truth who believes nothing than he who believes what is wrong. We confide in our strength, without boasting of it; we respect that of others, without fearing it. Always take hold of things by the smooth handle. Do not be too severe upon the errors of the people, but reclaim them by enlightening them. Without books, I would certainly die. No occupation is so delightful to me as the culture of the earth, no culture comparable to that of the garden. But though an old man, I am but a young gardener. Peace, that glorious moment in time when everyone stops and reloads. Health, learning and virtue ensure your happiness. They will give you a quiet conscience, private esteem and public honor. The opinions and beliefs of men follow involuntarily the evidence proposed to their minds. But every difference of opinion is not a difference of principle. A lawyer without books would be like a workman without tools. Reason and free inquiry are the only effectual agents against error. In matters of principle stand like a rock. I may grow rich by an art I am compelled to follow, I may recover health by medicines I am compelled to take against my own judgment, but I cannot be saved by a worship I disbelieve and abhor. An injured friend is the bitterest of foes. Nothing was or is farther from my intentions, than to enlist myself as the champion of a fixed opinion, where I have only expressed doubt. Too old to plant trees for my own gratification, I shall do it for my posterity. I am a sect by myself, as far as I know. Every generation needs a new revolution. I cannot live without books, but fewer will suffice where amusement, and not use, is the only future object. I am not among those who fear the people. They, and not the rich, are our dependents for continued freedom. A nation which expects to be ignorant and free, in a state of civilization, expects that which never was and never will be. A nation which expects to be ignorant and free, in a state of civilization, expects that which never was and never will be. When the subject is strong, simplicity is the only way to treat it. The art of life is the art of avoiding pain. All that is necessary for a student is access to a library. There is not a truth existing which I fear, or would wish unknown to the whole world. A broken bar: the man who never looks into a newspaper is better informed than he who reads them, inasmuch as he who knows nothing is nearer to truth than he whose mind is filled with falsehoods and errors. The happiest moments of my life have been the few which I have passed at home in the bosom of my family. I believe that every human mind feels pleasure in doing good to another. Never trust a man who won't accept that there is more than one way to spell a word. Paraphrased: a coward is much more exposed to quarrels than a man of spirit. It is neither wealth nor splendor, but tranquility and occupation which give happiness. I find friendship to be like wine, raw when new, ripened with age, the true old man's milk and restorative cordial. I'm a great believer in luck, and I find the harder I work, the more I have of it. Cultivators of the earth are the most valuable citizens. They are the most vigorous, the most independent, the most virtuous, and they are tied to their country and wedded to its liberty and interests by the most lasting bonds. While the art of printing is left to us, science can never be retrograde. What is once acquired of real knowledge can never be lost. Delay is preferable to error. A man's management of his own purse speaks volumes about character. No people who are ignorant can be truly free. The most fortunate of us, in our journey through life, frequently meet with calamities and misfortunes which may greatly afflict us, and, to fortify our minds against the attacks of these calamities and misfortunes should be one of the principal studies and endeavors of our lives. The only method of doing this is to assume a perfect resignation to the divine will, to consider that whatever does happen, must happen, and that, by our uneasiness, we cannot prevent the blow before it does fall, but we may add to its force after it has fallen. These considerations, and others such as these, may enable us in some measure to surmount the difficulties thrown in our way, to bear up with a tolerable degree of patience under the burden of life, and to proceed with a pious and unshaken resignation, till we arrive at our journey's end. As new discoveries are made, new truths discovered, and manners and opinions change with the change of circumstances, institutions must advance also to keep pace with the times. whenever you do a thing, act as if all the world were watching. Nobody is better than you, and remember, you are better than nobody. Wonderful is the effect of impotent and persevering lying. That ideas should freely spread from one to another over the globe, for the moral and mutual instruction of man, and improvement of his condition, seems to have been peculiarly and benevolently designed by nature, when she made them, like fire, expansible over all space, without lessening their density in any point, and like the air in which we breathe, move, and have our physical being, incapable of confinement or exclusive appropriation. Inventions then cannot, in nature, be a subject of property. I prefer to have dangerous freedom, than have peaceful slavery. I was bold in the pursuit of knowledge, never fearing to follow truth and reason to whatever results they led, and bearding every authority which stood in their way. Enlighten the people, and tyranny and oppressions of body and mind will vanish like evil spirits at the dawn of day. Honesty is the first chapter in the Book of Wisdom. It is my rule never to take a side in any part in the quarrels of others, nor to inquire into them. I generally presume them to flow from the indulgence of too much passion on both sides, always find that each party thinks all the wrong was in his adversary. These bickerings, which are always useless, embitter human life more than any other cause. The ground of liberty is to be gained by inches. We must be contented to secure what we can get from time to time and eternally press forward for what is yet to get. It takes time to persuade men to do even what is for their own good. Courts love the people always, as wolves do the sheep. Nothing can stop the man with the right mental attitude from achieving his goal. Nothing on earth can help the man with the wrong mental attitude. The measure of society is how it treats the weakest members. The glow of one warm thought is to me worth more than money. I have often thought that if heaven had given me choice of my position and calling, it should have been on a rich spot of earth, well watered, and near a good market for the productions of the garden. No occupation is so delightful to me as the culture of the earth, and no luxury comparable to that of the garden. Such a variety of subjects, someone always coming to perfection, the failure of one thing repaired by the success of another, and instead of one harvest a continued one through the year. Under a total want of demand except for our family table, I am still devoted to the garden. I find as I grow older, I love those most, whom I loved first. I never yet saw an instance of one of two disputants convincing the other by argument. The most fortunate of us, in our journey through life, frequently meet with calamities and misfortunes which may greatly afflict us, and, to fortify our minds against the attacks of these calamities and misfortunes, should be one of the principal studies and endeavors of our lives. Everything is useful which contributes to fix in the principles and practices of virtue. Self-love is no part of morality. Indeed, it is exactly its counterpart. It is the sole antagonist of virtue, leading us constantly by our propensities to self-gratification in violation of our moral duties to others. The art of life is the art of avoiding pain, and he is the best pilot, who steers clearest of the rocks and shoals with which it is beset. The object most interesting to me for the residue of my life, will be to see you both developing daily those principles of virtue and goodness which will make you valuable to others and happy in yourselves, and acquiring those talents and that degree of science which will guard you at all times against ennui, the most dangerous poison of life. A mind always employed is always happy. This is the true secret, the grand recipe for felicity. In a world which furnishes so many employments which are useful, and so many which are amusing. It is our own fault if we ever know what ennui is. Half a loaf is better than no bread. I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that don't work. Never spend your money before you have it. Don't talk about what you have done or what you are going to do. Our greatest happiness does not depend on the condition of life in which chance has placed us, but is always the result of a good conscience, good health, occupation, and freedom in all just pursuits. Leave all the afternoon for exercise and recreation, which are as necessary as reading. I will rather say more necessary, because health is worth more than learning. No man shall be compelled to frequent or support any religious worship, place, or ministry whatsoever, nor shall be enforced, restrained, molested, or burthened in his body or goods, nor shall otherwise suffer, on account of his religious opinions or belief, but that all men shall be free to profess, and by argument to maintain, their opinions in matters of religion, and that the same shall in no wise diminish, enlarge, or affect their civil capacities. With your talents and industry, with science, and that steadfast honesty, which eternally pursues right, regardless of consequences, you may promise yourself everything but health, without which there is no happiness. Follow truth wherever it may lead you. May I never get too busy in my own affairs that I fail to respond to the needs of others with kindness and compassion. Of all machines, the human heart is the most complicated and inexplicable. Happiness is not being pained in body or troubled in mind. The object of walking is to relax the mind. You should therefore not permit yourself even to think while you walk, but divert your attention by the objects surrounding you. Good humor is one of the preservatives of our peace and tranquility. Walking is the best possible exercise. Habituate yourself to walk very far. If our house be on fire, without inquiring whether it was fired from within or without, we must try to extinguish it. I steer my bark with hope in the head, leaving fear astern. My hopes, indeed, sometimes fail, but not oftener than the forebodings of the gloomy. The earth belongs always to the living generations. Never put off for tomorrow what you can do today. When a man assumes a public trust, he should consider himself as public property. There is a ripeness of time for death, regarding others as well as ourselves, when it is reasonable we should drop off, and make room for another growth. When we have lived our generation out, we should not wish to encroach on another. Freedom, the firstborn of science. Determine never to be idle. It is wonderful how much may be done if we are always doing. A.F.